Well, happy Saturday, everybody. I'm Walter, your independent travel advisor with Where's Walter Travel, with a special edition of Cruise Chat Live with the one and only, needs no introduction, Mr. Gary Bembridge. Hello.
Hi there, Walter. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you for taking time out of your Saturday. We really, really appreciate it. And a lot of my friends were like, oh my gosh, can't believe you're going to have Gary on. This is going to be great. And already, we've got Mimi, we got Peggy, Sue, Gigi, Josie, everybody. Hello, good morning. Oh, hello from sunny Scotland. How about that already? Wow.
Well,
Hello,
I'm glad
Scotland.
it's sunny in Scotland. It's not sunny in London. So
how is it over there right now?
Yeah.
How is it over there, Gary, right now? How's your weather?
Well, we haven't had a great summer. It's like normally in summer, it's like you're normally 30, 40, up to 40 degrees or so. This year it's been kind of not brilliant. So at the moment it's not too bad. It's like only 20 degrees Celsius. I don't know what it is Fahrenheit. Tomorrow's 27 degrees Celsius, so hot. So I guess that's what, like 8, 90. I'm not very good in the
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So maybe summer will get a little bit better right before it turns into fall.
Yeah.
Everybody, thank you so much for the kind words. I know some of you, it is your first time over here. I'm Walter, an independent travel advisor with Where's Walter Travel. The company is me and my wife, and we're very honored that Gary considers us one of the 2 travel agencies here in the United States that he recommends for his travel. So thank you, Gary. Very, very much appreciate that.
Pleasure.
So let's here's the thing I love about you, and this is my story too. Here you are considered one of the foremost experts in cruising today, yet you didn't want to go on your first cruise. In fact, you had no interest in cruising at all. I didn't want to go on my first cruise. So I would love to hear a little bit of that backstory. Like what was it about cruising that you said, no, I don't want to go?
Probably like most people, I had all the usual misconceptions. I guess maybe it's changed a little bit now in more recent years with, Royal Caribbean. It seemed, all that money's been spent talking about young people and families. But I just thought it was really something, again, horrible stereotype. It's old people, it's boring, it's dull, you're trapped, all those kind of things. So the first time I ever went on a cruise, I guess, and you know my story, I guess, is I was invited to go and do a talk, not an enrichment talk, but it was a company that would charter ships and run kind of marketing conferences, and that's my background. So they asked me to go and talk, do a marketing talk on that. So I thought, probably it was just in Southampton. It wasn't very far away. It'd be a chance to see what this cruising thing is all about. So I got on the ship. The minute I got on the ship, I was blown away by the ship because I hadn't really expected ships to be like they were and all the facilities. And then literally, I guess within the first 15, 20 minutes of setting out down the Solent in Southampton, it's like, oh my God, this is incredible. I get now why people want to be out. And then once we were out at sea, I just loved it. So then I came back from that trip and I said to my partner, like, Mark writes, we're going on a cruise. Because I'd always, even as a little kid, I was very taken by kind of iconic travel, Orient Express and all that sort of stuff in history. So I sort of knew I wanted to go on the QE2, but I'd never really made any plans to do it. So when I came back from this, like, we're going on the QE2 and we're going to do it. Then I was, as you know, but it's so true of so many other people. Like my sister-in-law, I've been, my partner I've been with for 20 something years, and for 20 years I've been trying to convince my sister-in-law to go on a cruise, and she was the same. Post-COVID, they were more cautious about travel and didn't want to fly and all sorts of stuff. Got them on a cruise line, which I'm not a big fan of, but I knew they would like. They now have been on, I think, 6 cruises. This is actually last year. She's been on 6 cruises. They booked a 70-night round Asia trip. And again, she was like, "Oh my God, I get it now." It's getting people over that hurdle, which I guess I guess most people who come to you know they want to go on a cruise. I guess that you don't really people that come to you, will you book one for me?
Yeah. Well, and sometimes it's, should I go on a cruise? Like they're torn between a land. And I'll tell you what, Gary, sometimes people come to us for a cruise. We end up booking them on a land vacation because for what they want to do.
Right.
Because it's, we only have so much time in port. And if you really want to do something on land, you got to do a land tour, right?
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm just kind of curious what you said, like it was just within that, like first sail away and all that. What was it about that you're like, oh my God, this is it?
it was something about it. I don't know. I feel there's something inherent in people about water and sea. Like loads of people want to live by the sea, and if you ask people why, they can never quite tell you why, because they never go in the sea or whatever. I feel like there's a draw somehow in some of us anyway towards water and the sea. So it was just as we were sailing down, because you go down the Solent like a river into the sea, and there was just this sense of just experience. You were in the middle of this river, you were gliding through. It was just magical, and the sun's going down. Normally sun's going down. It was like, wow, this is just incredible. Feeling. But I think there's something about us just connecting with the ocean.
Yeah. For me, it was, we had the beautiful sail away, then we had dinner, and then we saw a show, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's all like right here. I don't have to get in a car, go to dinner, get in a car, go to the show. So that was it. I was hooked right there. By the way, was Mark bitten on that first cruise?
We went on a like a little taste, in fact, on the same ship, and then we went on the QE2 without really thinking it through in a way, because it was a winter crossing, so it was just before December. It was, of course, crossing the Atlantic in winter. It's very, very rough. The ship was all over the place. He was violently seasick. But he's done like 30-something cruises now. So it's definitely hooked. Yeah.
Wow, that's phenomenal. By the way, before let's see, we got some questions already starting to pop up. What count are you up to now? How many cruises have you done?
So I actually read this down, and you would ask me. So I've just done my 116th cruise, which was the last cruise I did, and then yes, I've done 116. Now so that ranges. Some of them are short, like 1 or 2 nights, shakedown cruises. And some are up to like 7 weeks. So, but I think I've done. I have, because I love numbers and spreadsheets. I think on my spreadsheet, I'm heading towards 1,000 nights at sea, something like that.
Wow, 1,000 nights at sea.
Yeah, I think by the middle of next year, I think I've done about 1,000 nights at sea, something.
Wow,
like that.
That's over 3 years.
Yeah.
Let's see. Wow. Okay, people, goals. Everybody watching, goals. It's so amazing. I think this is an interesting question from Josie here. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anybody else above it. Do you find cruises with concierge or suites are worth going on a single cruise, or maybe going with lower tier other than that so that you can go on more cruises?
Yeah, Josie, I mean, it's an interesting dilemma, I guess. It's one, certainly because I cruise solo a lot. I think 3/4 or more of the cruises I've done are solo. So a lot of it depends on where I'm going. So if I'm going on a long cruise, one of the cruises I've got booked next year is like, it's almost a month-long cruise down the coast of Africa. So for that, I've gone concierge, which is just kind of, I'm going on region, which is expensive anyway, but it's kind of it's not quite as cheap, but it's entry level, but you do get some more perks. And perks like laundry, for example, although I think a region now they do laundry on all. But but sometimes it's a thing of kind of having that, knowing that also, particularly if I'm on a bigger ship, I actually quite like those where you have a lounge you can go to. But especially if you're a solo traveler, like if you're going to say Holland America, I did a South America trip, which was about 2.5 weeks, and I went in the kind of the entry level suite there. Partly because I was on it for quite a long time. I had a bigger cabin, but the lounge is actually quite good as a solo traveler, because you get to know the concierge, you get to know the people in that area, because it's just, you see the same people a lot. Sure. So actually it's quite good. And because I'm not a person that, I don't drink alcohol, so I tend not to hang around the bars and stuff. I know for a lot of the people, they might have that. I'm not a big trivia player, so other people meet it that way. So it sort of varies. I'm trying, I mean, it really depends on that journey. So for example, if I'm going on the transatlantic on Queen Mary 2, which is one of my favorite trips, is I would go in a suite then, whether I'm going with Mark or not with Mark, because the experience you get is quite different, because there it's all about the dining experience, and actually Queen's Court is amazing. So it's kind of balancing those out. And I do, because I plan right through to like a booked into 2026. So obviously then I sort of planned, it's a budget thing because I cruise a lot and kind of balancing those two. But the other thing that I do, sorry, I'm probably asking too much of Joe's question. What I've started to do a lot of nowadays is play the kind of the low solar supplement game, which is quite hard. But like I just went to the Kimberley, for example, and I'd always wanted to go there, but I got it, and it was seaborne, so it's already expensive. But I got a 25% supplement. I'm going back to Antarctica this year, but I'm going at the beginning of the season because it's 25% supplement. So it's a jumble of things. So I'd rather go in a lower cabin at 25% supplement because I can go somewhere exotic. So it's kind of juggling. So it's a long way of Josie. There's no simple answer, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really comes down to the itinerary and the vacation that you're looking for. Because sometimes look, sometimes it's the suite is worth it, the upper level is worth it, and other times like you know what, I'm just getting away on a vacation. I want to relax. In fact, I just went through that with a guest who's going to Alaska. The balcony, ocean view, and it was a $3,000 difference. And ultimately, it was like, well, I can put that $3,000 towards, helicopter rides and dog sleds and things like that. And she went with the ocean view.
And particularly like Alaska, because you're right, you probably want to do a helicopter ride, and that's going to cost you $600 per person or something. So
yeah.
The other thing I would say to Josie's question is, this coming to my head is, if I was going, which I don't do very often, but if I'm going on a mega ship, I will always go like in a suite because that does give you escape, on MSC or Royal Caribbean or whatever, because because you can escape from the crowds.
Yeah. And actually, you just led right into one of the questions that I had anyway, because I know you were recently on the Symphony of the Seas, the Royal Caribbean Symphony of the Seas. That is an Oasis class ship, one of the largest cruise ships in the world. And, Royal Caribbean is now building a fourth Icon, maybe two more after that. Carnival says, we see your ship. We're going to raise you. We're going to take it up to almost 8,000 passengers now on our next, whatever it's going to be after the Excel. I mean, what do you think about this mega ship fever, if you will? Is this good for the cruising industry as a whole?
Well, it's interesting because I don't understand to a degree why they're doing it in a way, because the bigger the ship, the fewer places it can go for a start. So I'm assuming that they're placing a bet on the fact that they try to talk, or come back to a discussion earlier, or people who want to go to a resort. And actually one of the most cost-effective resorts they're going to be able to go to is going to be at sea. So actually people are going to be much less concerned about going to Rome, going to Livorno, going to the Grand Cayman or through the Panama Canal. They're actually going to want to go for a vacation on a massive ship. And I think it's interesting because I think you posted about it a while ago, was just how many of these ships are also doing 3 and 4 nighters as well. So it does feel like they're looking at going, short, cost-effective resort with it. Because if you're on for 4 days, you're probably not bothered about a port. And increasingly, they're going to their own destinations as well. So I find it kind of counterintuitive because, and I covered it recently in one of my videos, was there's a lot of ports are pushing back. A lot of ports, certainly in Europe anyway, are talking about banning mega ships, only wanting to get smaller ships to get not only from a pressure, because they get a lot of pressure on land-based tourism and ocean-based tourism. So a lot of these ports, certainly in Europe, are saying we don't want big ships anymore. So from a logistical perspective, they can't go anywhere. From a public and political perspective. So I find it really strange in a way, because it seems counter to the trends, environment or blah, blah, all those things. And I'm not a big, from a personal perspective, I go on mega ships mostly to cover them for the channel, because I know that's what people want. It's not what I would choose. So I try not to, cloud the view, but it seems so counter the trend. But I'm going to spend $1 billion or whatever it is to build a ship without having a good sense of where the trends are going, where they think the trends are going.
Yeah, to me, it's kind of, almost nutty to get up to that 8,000 person mark. All I think about is the logistics of getting everybody off the ship and then back on.
The thing I would say with Symphony, I did Symphony twice in the space of 6 months. I did it in Europe, classic Western training, then I did in the Caribbean. And what I would say, both my experience in both Europe and in the Caribbean, although it was better actually out of Fort Lauderdale, is just one thing I do admire a lot about Royal Caribbean, and also Norwegian, but Royal Caribbean, is how they understand crowds and how they understand how to manage people way better than, say, MSC does, for example. I was just amazed at how clever, it was interesting because I did Symphony of the Seas. I did a 6-night on Symphony of the Seas. I went down to Miami and boarded Oceana Vista, which is a 1,000 whatever passengers ship. So it's kind of two extremes. Getting onto Symphony took about, like 10%, it was like 90% quicker getting on Symphony of the Seas than it was getting on Oceana Vista, with 1,000 passengers or whatever it was.
Wow.
Just because they, and with the different districts they have, which I see Carnival are talking about having more districts and stuff. I was just so impressed how they, even though there were 6,000 something passengers on Symphony and it felt busy, it didn't feel as busy as, say, on MSC when I was on with 4,500, just because the way they manage people. But you're right, it becomes almost their core competency needs to become managing people, logistics, if you like.
And to your point, one of the things that I try to impress upon people is how well the Oasis class ships spread people out.
It's remarkable.
I mean, during embarkation, yes, everybody stops in the promenade to look, but then once the ship is underway, it's remarkable how the ship is, like, half the time you don't even realize that the ship might be sold out. It's incredible.
Exactly. And I mean, also it was great. I mean, during the day it was great because everyone got off, and I actually I didn't actually go to the port myself a lot, partly because I wanted to video the ship, and it was obviously easier when there's not people there.
Right.
The one thing I would say, which is more of from a cruise fan perspective, back to our discussion around getting people on ships, the biggest hurdle with people I talk to, when I meet people who don't go on cruises, they all say, but I don't want to be at sea with 4,000 people or 6,000 people. And my point is, you don't have to. You can go with 100 people if you want to. But the problem is, the bigger the ships get, of course, the more publicity they get, because that's the mainstream media covers it. And people's view of cruising gets very clouded by mega ships in reality.
Yes, and they get very clouded by the TikToks and the short videos of things going wrong. That's just a very small portion of the cruise industry that goes wrong.
Exactly.
So, but I got one better for you. We were on the Oceana Serena with only 670 passengers, and then a few weeks later we were on the Icon. talk about a difference. And by the way, the Icon is a fantastic cruise ship. I actually like it more than the Icon, than the Oasis class, because they cleaned up some of the flow. It's a lot easier to move around. And that Aqua dome up front, the big dome up front, oh my God, it's like one of the most.
There was a program, I'm sure they probably had it stateside as well, which is on, was it last week or the week before? It was a TV program around Icon, and it was covering its maiden voyage and stuff.
It's phenomenal. Hopefully you'll get on it one of these days.
Everyone I've spoken to, I think everyone I've spoken to really likes Icon.
I think you should look at the Icon Loft. I think that's the best suite on the ship, because that's lifted right off the Celebrity Edge series. I mean, there's so much celebrity in the Icon.
Double level ones, is it?
It's a dual level, and they're on the side. And that, to me, when we did the tour, that's the best suite on the entire ship.
What's interesting with Royal is and I think I did it in my video when I did it, it was one of, because obviously on the channel I cover lots of small ships like cruise ships as well. And one of my most expensive cruises that I've done, I think if not the most expensive, non-expedition cruise, is on Royal. They are very expensive. Once you get into the suite level, it's really, really expensive.
You can get into Oceana, Silver Sea, Azamara for the same price as the Royal Caribbean suites.
Exactly.
You're not kidding there. From Gigi, other than cruises, what are some of your other favorite forms of travel and vacation? That's a good one.
I am obsessed with trains. I absolutely love trains. I'm absolutely obsessed with trains. So, we've been on. So in the UK, they have these sort of revamped Pullman trains. They do things like afternoon teas and dinners. So I do those. But I've done the GAN, the Indian Pacific, Rovos Rail. Any time I go on a cruise, I could look through all the excursions and ports to see if there's any train trips, so like the Flam train, the White Pass and the Yukon and White Pass train. So trains, absolutely adore trains, and I'm always looking at the different trains. So I love trains. And the other thing I do absolutely love is beaches. I'm a massive fan of beaches. So, and particularly Australia. So we've been to Australia quite a few times. We used to go pre-pandemic. We started going at Christmas to Australia, and I absolutely love beaches, and particularly like beaches with waves. So places like Mauritius, Australia, those sort of places. So those would be my, if I was going to, those would like if heaven consists of train rides, beaches with waves, and cruises, then I would be very happy.
Wow, that's awesome. I love it. I wasn't expecting beaches, but trains. I love.
Yeah, love trains.
You guys have like amazing trains over there in Europe too. That we have the Bright Line here now, which is awesome for getting between Orlando and Miami. But you have some absolutely stunning trains over there.
Yeah, there's some good trains around, and the high speed trains like things like Eurostar and the TGVs in France and stuff like that. So yeah, it's
right, great. Right. Oh, hey, Sue and Phil are watching from the car. Hey guys, keep your eyes on the road. I like that. Hey, do you have like a favorite ocean or let's say maybe region that you like to sail in?
Alex, if I was to say, probably the most magical place to cruise in is French Polynesia. It is unbelievably beautiful. And then, so not only is the scenery beautiful, the people are amazing and very beautiful people as well, both physically and the way that they live and express themselves and stuff. And, the islands are magnificent. So that would, that whole French Polynesian region is probably my favorite place. And I do, partly because I'm from the UK, I love the Caribbean. I absolutely love going to the Caribbean because, again, what I will often do is go either November, or I like to go normally January, February time. So it's, when winter's plodding through in the UK and it's grey and kind of damp and wet. And same to the Caribbean at that time, because it's also quite quiet at that time. It's sort of post-Christmas stuff. And I just love going around all the Caribbean islands because it's the beach. And people, I often get asked on my lives and things like for excursion tips in the Caribbean. And I'm terrible at it because I basically say I go to the beach. And so I can't do any course other than the beach. I can't tell you, like I don't do anything other than go to the beach in the Caribbean.
Oh,
anything like those sort of things. That would be the thing. Yeah.
So the next time you go to Puerto Plata, let me know, because you've got to try the mud buggies. I would love to see you do that. That one where I got completely muddy.
Oh, okay, right. We've done an ATV in St. Lucia. Is that
okay?
But the mud buggies are the ones with the roll bars on.
The mud buggy, yeah. So it's a big roll bar, and they're
yeah.
They say they're puddled, but they're more like small ponds that you're driving through.
Right.
It's really fun. I'd love to see you do that. I'd love to.
Drive myself away from the beach.
Travel says that they're enjoying their deck 2 ocean view more than the balcony on Celebrity Edge for Alaska because they've got the dolphins right outside the window.
Oh, wow.
That is one of the cool things about Ocean View Cabin. They're basically down there by the waterline. It's very cool.
Yeah.
It's very cool. So Josie, the bit about the travel business, that would be another discussion. But Gary, in terms of starting a vlog, and that was going to be one of the questions later on, do you have and I know we could go on for hours on this, but do you have just a couple of tips for maybe starting out a vlog?
Yeah, so, and specifically around taxes as well, I was asking around. So I'll talk about the taxes because that may differ a little bit. I mean, I think my main tip, in fact, I've actually just written an article because people ask me this a lot, which I'm going to put on my site soon. But my main thing that I say to people when they're thinking of starting a vlog is obviously ask yourself, why are you going to do it? And do you have enough time to do it? We were talking about earlier just about the amount of time it takes to write scripts, edit, all that sort of stuff. But that's assuming that's a yes. So make sure you understand the commitment you're making to. But the second thing is to spend a couple of times thinking around, who am I making this for? Like, who is my audience? And really think through who they are, what do they want? And then, so once you've got that in your head, is secondly, to ask yourself, and what am I offering them that's different to everything else. And it could be, you might decide actually it's my personal perspective. With Josie, I'm guessing from her earlier question, might be around solo travel, or solo travel as a woman, or sort of woman of a certain age, of 20, whatever it is. But what are you going to do different? And then what I always say to people is, once you've got that in your mind, think about just conceptually. I'll use an example as, when Queen Anne launched a couple of months ago, there were a bunch of bloggers all went on the maiden voyage, and they all made exactly the same video. I mean, I'm being exaggerating a bit, but
you're not really.
All made the same video. So the point is like, okay, but you need to stand out in the crowd. So, for example, when I made my Queen Anne video, I made a video around, I've done, I can't remember the number now, but it's something like 200. I spent 200 nights or something on Cunard. So, as a person who's done a huge amount of Cunard trips, this is what I think of the new ship. It's thinking around what makes you different and stuff. That would be my, the area to focus. And once you're clear in your mind, so in my mind, I know who I'm talking to. And it's interesting because then when I meet people on ships, which I'm fortunate enough to meet a lot, is they are exactly who I have in mind, which is fantastic, because, I'm either talking to them correctly, or you kind of connect with someone. When it comes to taxes, my only advice, I don't have a specific book, but make sure you really understand it. I had a fight for most of this year with the tax man in the UK, who didn't understand how YouTube works, didn't understand the difference between enjoying something and a business. And luckily, I keep very detailed accounts. I have QuickBooks and stuff like that. But generally speaking, and I suspect it differs by country, you'll know for the US, but certainly in the UK, I had to prove that every trip was genuinely a business trip. So I could show things, for example, that I do polls every year around what people want me to cover. I could show that I went on trips that I wouldn't necessarily go if I was going just for pleasure, like simply the seas, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And just have the record. So I did win the argument, by the way. They just didn't understand how this whole thing works. And they would argue at one point, but we can see you like going cruising, so we don't think this is a job. My point was like, I'm sure hairdressers like doing hair, so restaurant critics like reviewing restaurants, but just that, because it's still a new world. But phenomenally detailed records. I mean, I have spreadsheets for every trip which show what videos are made, what patron videos are made. So I could show this is a business.
Wow, that's great.
It's a business,
Yeah, keeping the records, that is the most important.
And that helped, because every question they asked me, I would go, here's a spreadsheet, or
wow, that's great. And that takes a while to set up, but once you have it set up, then
once you get it set up, you get into the rhythm.
And Josie, I don't know if you're in the US or somewhere else, but in terms of a travel agency, I'm just going to briefly say, look up host agencies. That's how I work. That's how most of us in the US work. Basically, there's a top level agency. I'm an independent contractor, whereas Walter Travel is an independent travel agency. And we work under the credentials of KHM Travel Group, that's out of the Cleveland area. And there are quite a few of those around. You really got to do your homework on them, because some are better than others, just like anything else. So, but that's a whole other discussion talking about.
I would say, just speaking of that point, Walter, just to Josie's point, is I'm a big, and you know this, because that's why I recommend you, and also like travel agent Sarah in the UK, is because Sarah has a similar to you, is I like working with travel agents who are their own boss. They live or die based on how good they are, and that's why but they have all the clout and influence and back office of the big group. I like that approach a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we are. I mean, this is it. This is all. In October 22nd will be 2 years, and this is all we do.
Wow, is it 2 years already? Gary,
I know.
I would have said you would do like a year or something. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And we didn't even plan it this way, but we're going to be on the Sun Princess on October 22nd, so that's going to be brilliant.
We'll I'm doing on Sun Princess, but only in June, actually. So.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. Let's see. We got a couple questions here. Panama Canal. How many times have you gone through, and what do you like the most about the Panama Canal?
I have been through the Panama Canal 3 times now, although one of them was a partial transit, to be fair. So through twice, once. I'm going again in December. Any excuse I possibly can have, I will go through Panama Canal. So and what do I like about it most? The reason I like the Panama Canal is, first of all, the canal itself, particularly the old canal. So I've always been on ships that are Panamax size, so they can go through the old canal. I do need to go through the new canal at some point to experience it. But you go through this thing that was built in 1913 that is still exactly, I mean, obviously that's repaired stuff, but just the story behind it, the thousands and thousands of people that died building it, the politics, the shenanigans and stuff. So just this phenomena of engineering is just magnificent. And going through the canal as an experience is just mind-boggling when you just look at this, what you're seeing, and you can almost reach, you're not allowed to, but you can almost reach out and touch, the mule things and the walls. It's just, it's just the fact that it's the experience. It's not a canal, obviously. It's a series of locks, a lake, and a series of locks. So that whole experience is it's a very diverse experience. But it's just a sense, even though I've done it that number of times, it feels like you're part of an incredible experience. And it's a unique experience, because a lot go through, but in reality, not a lot of cruise ships go through. I did look up the number, whatever, but I mean, it is a lot. It's not a lot. It's just the sense of so that's the Panama Canal. But also, I love the fact that you're going, from the Caribbean, depending which way you're going, but you get some Caribbean stuff on one end, then you can go to the other side, and you get a bit more of kind of rainforests and exotic kind of excursions, very different cultures. So I like that mixture of, because they normally you've got some beach days and you've got some rainforest excursion days. So it's quite a diverse itinerary. And I like cruises that are a little bit longer. So they're normally like 10 days, 2 weeks. So I have a group cruise coming up next beginning of 26, which is a Panama Canal, which is the most requested itinerary for me to do as a group cruise, because everyone knows I'm passionate about it. Yeah.
Nice. Very nice. And to your point, we were on the Island Princess, and when we came into the lock, we could have literally just stepped right off the promenade deck onto land. Don't do it, because you're going to get kicked off the cruise. But it was so tempting just to jump over the railing and be on land. It is
mind-boggling when you see how little space it is and how they go through. It's just and the stories and
and what's really cool about that partial transit, if anybody's doing a partial transit, there's probably going to be an excursion on a boat that holds about 200 or so people that will go all the way through to the other side. Take that, because you get that experience of the big ship going through, and then you really appreciate just how big the locks are when you're on the little boat being lifted up. That is phenomenal. Have you noticed any difference between sailing out of the Americas versus the other parts? So how are Americans to sail with, I think is what Alex is asking. but have you noticed any difference cruising?
Not really. Not enormously. I mean, it depends. The only real difference that I've probably seen is, obviously, if you're sailing out of American ports, I've only ever sailed out of the main ports in the US. I have never sailed out of Tampa or Baltimore, or some of those. I've only ever sailed out of like Port Canaveral, Miami, Everglades, San Diego, LA, those kind of ports. So a lot of those are quite very developed ports. They know how to manage people. So I have sailed out of some ports in South America, which have been a little bit more shambolic in a way, a little bit disorganized.
Gotcha.
They're not having ships every day, boom, 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 boom. So the process is a little bit less slick. But certainly if you sail out of most of the Mediterranean ports, Southampton or Dover or Civitavecchia or whatever, it's very, very similar. And in reality, unless you're going on a very specific European line, which, AIDA, which is going to be Germans, or, Mein Schiff, which is Germans, whatever, which I haven't really done. I've done some HapagLloyd, which are Germans. In reality, often, if you're sailing outside of Europe, probably most of the ship are going to be Americans or Canadians, or anyway, particularly because many of the lines, the Whole America Princess, Celebrity, you're always going to have a big slug of Americans. If you sail out of Southampton, you'll tend to have a British audience, because some of those lines are very British. Some of them you can only book if you're British. But not a big difference. The main difference is just the logistics side. It's been my main experience.
Gotcha. Every time I see one of those Mein Schiff in ports, they look like beautiful ships. I would really like to experience one of those.
Yeah, I would like to know. I keep looking at them, and you have to. The thing with, what Mein Schiff, I think I'm right in saying, doesn't. What's good about HapagLloyd, which is one of their sister, because Mein Schiff is a joint venture between TUI and Royal Caribbean, so they're 50-50. But what HapagLloyd does is they nominate one of their ships, the Europa 2, as an international ship. So all the crew are bilingual. Everything's done, kind of managed, and they use it the same when I went on expedition to Greenland. It was they had one of their expedition ships as bilingual. When I've sort of investigated Mein Schiff, it seems much more focused on the German speaker. They can cope a little bit with English, so it's a little bit more challenging. But the ships always look very new, very modern. They've got lots of new ships out. I think they're about Mein Schiff 6, I think, something like that. Yeah.
I don't know what they're up to, but yeah, and I know that we would be a stranger in a strange land, but I think that would actually be kind of a neat part of the experience, right? Trying to communicate with folks.
Yes, it is. Because I've done quite a few in Europe on river cruises, both in Europe and actually in the Mekong with across Europe, which is I've sometimes only been 3 English speakers on. And I did a 3-week on HapagLloyd to Greenland, and it was after 3 weeks. You realize it was quite challenging when you are like in the minority, if you like. For a week or 2, I think it would be great because you would just embrace it. But it was quite challenging, actually, being like, kind of with most people aren't speaking English, and my German is like that much.
Wow. Here's actually a local question for you. Where's a good place to stay when flying into Heathrow if you're sailing out of Southampton? She wants to spend 2 to 3 days. Betty is actually one of our clients flying over there. So any tips for staying for a couple days?
One of the challenges is always asking a local for a hotel.
Right. Yeah, people say the same thing. Where should I stay in Orlando?
I guess Betty, is looking to. I assume she's wanted to do sightseeing in London. I'm assuming that's what she's asking. So, trying to stay somewhere. I mean, the advantage with London is because of the underground, you can get around pretty easily. Anyway, but if you really want to stay, in the heart of London, so if you stay like in the Covent Garden area, the advantage with there is you can walk to a lot of the things that you're going to want to walk to. You could, depending on how much you like walking, but you can even walk to Buckingham Palace. You can walk to Covent Garden, the West End, down to the Thames, that kind of stuff. But also, one of the things I always recommend to people, obviously, depending on budget and stuff, hotels in central London are very expensive. They're not kind of crazy New York prices quite. But the other thing, Betty, is also take a look, if you're looking for a more affordable one, is to take a look at a chain called Premier Inn. They have incredible locations, and they're kind of like a budget chain hotel, but the rooms are quite small, but they're nice, comfortable beds, immaculately clean. Nice. But they have phenomenal locations.
Okay.
Even though they're budget hotels. So actually also, take a look at them, because you can often get a fabulous location for a pretty good price. You have to book direct though with them. That you can't book through a travel agent. Sorry, also, but it's but it's worth looking at them. The other thing, if you're going to if Betty's going out of Southampton, I would, the most cost-effective way is to go by train, which is goes out of London Waterloo. But you can get an Uber or a taxi easily to Waterloo. But that would be my recommendation, because the other alternative is a National Express bus, which is very inexpensive. Takes about an hour and a half. The train takes about an hour and a bit. The bus will be like an hour and a half or so.
Gotcha. So
but if you're hiring a car, that's going to cost you like $250, $300.
No, sounds like the train is the way to go.
I would normally go to on the train if I'm going by myself.
Yeah. And Tom and Dom, hey guys, I've had these guys on the show before, and you just came off Resilient. I'm glad the VB tips. Have you been on? You've been on Virgin yet?
I have. In fact, on my sister-in-law was on Resilient Lady at the same trip as Tom and Dom, and they did not enjoy it. But I knew they wouldn't enjoy Virgin. I was like, why are you going on Virgin? It's not for you. And it was a 4-nighter. It was a bit of a it was a bit more party. Yeah, I've been on Virgin, and I do want to go. In fact, when I was talking earlier about doing polls, and people want me to go back on Virgin, which I would like to. I would like to have gone. I think we spoke about this, Walter. I'd like to go on Brilliant Lady because I want to see what they're doing, because they're implying that they're doing something different, but haven't announced it, I don't think.
Yes.
But I did watch a webinar that they had where they kept sort of hinting they were going to do something different.
Yeah.
But the itineraries don't quite work. They're doing a couple out of New York, which worked for me timing wise, but
yeah.
And then they were doing a Canada one, I think, which didn't quite. I'm not sure.
Yes.
I'm not sure cold weather and Virgin ships are a good marriage.
Alaska for a whole season. I did not have that on my bingo card.
Because I did, the first time I did Virgin was I think I might have spoken to this before. It was UK. It was cold. It was grey.
Yeah.
Got to the ship and it was grey and a grey sky. And it was cold and you know, whereas you know you want those ships are designed to be outside and
they are.
Yeah.
They are. So according to all of the reps that I've talked to, they put a poll out to all the sailors, where should we go next? And they said Alaska was like overwhelming.
Yeah, I bet.
You know, I love Virgin. I don't know that I want to take them to Alaska.
Yeah.
Just because, so this year there's like around 60 ships or something like that. So it's very crowded. It's hard to get in there, first of all. Then secondly, you talked about vlogging. Well, what is Virgin going to bring that's going to be different when you've already got 60 ships in Alaska all competing for a couple of ports?
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting up there. By the way, what do you think, talking about the Brilliant Lady, what do you think about just leaving a ship parked outside of Civitavecchia for well over a year when she's ready to go? Because I keep seeing pictures of the Brilliant Lady just sitting there. Yeah,
it's really strange. I mean, I guess I assume they had a plan and then Australia didn't pan out for them. So and I guess they made no money or something there. So I guess they, maybe to your point, they just struggled to find you know, itineraries that they thought they could sell. Because I guess they put, is Brazilian Lady out of which do they put out of San Juan? Is it Brazilian Lady or
Well, Brilliant Lady was supposed to be out of San Juan, and then they moved Valiant over there.
Which is supposed to be in Australia. They moved Valiant there. So I'm assuming they just couldn't find enough that they felt they could sell, which is why I guess they're going to Alaska, because they can't sell more Caribbean, more Med. I guess.
It's just so odd to see a ship just done sitting there.
No, it's kind of eerie because it sort of gives you kind of flashback to COVID, doesn't it? All those ships.
The one that I really want to take is there's one that starts in Quebec and ends up in Miami, and Charleston is one that stops along the way. That looks like a brilliant itinerary.
Yeah, that didn't work with me time wise. That's why, but you're right, it goes down as because they do that. They do the 2 New Yorks, then they do Quebec, then they do down, and eventually through Panama up, don't they?
Yeah, we're going to get to experience that with Tony and Jenny B in 26. We're taking the very first Norwegian Jewel from Philly down to Bermuda, but there is a stop in Charleston on the way back, so that's going to be pretty cool.
I actually looked at that. Did you sold out now? I think I saw Tony and them saying they were sold out.
The registration is sold out, but I mean, there's still room on the ship, and we can still slide you into the group.
Right.
Yeah. So no, if you want to come along, I mean, obviously there's plenty of room still on the ship. So you should come. That's going to be pretty cool. First sailing out of Philadelphia, I think, ever for a cruise ship.
Right.
That's going to be kind of neat. I see there's a couple other questions, but there were 2 particular questions that I wanted to talk about today, because my gosh, Gary, it's already been almost 45 minutes. Time flies. The one I really want to talk about is the luxury cruising, because every time I bring that up, people just have these misconceptions. They have these myths about, well, what is luxury cruising going to be? And I had asked you about this before the show, but what do you think are just 3 like common misconceptions or myths that people have about luxury cruising?
Probably one of them is the one we touched on earlier, which is people think that it's going to cost way more, but actually, if they do the numbers, it doesn't necessarily cost way more. It might, depending on what you're traveling. But I always say to people, like, you need to do like a proper door-to-door, if you like, comparison. And, you know, and particularly if once you're cruising kind of balcony and above, like particularly, you know, good, you know, on balcony grades up, you may be surprised that it's not that much more. You know, particularly if you add, you know, nowadays, even if you go on Princess and you look at how expensive their Princess Plus and Princess super plus, what I can't remember what the new one's called. Once you start adding all those on, you might find that the price. So when I look at prices, and I've covered in some of my videos, is when I compare pricing, I've gone on, say, Norwegian, on the Haven, and that one, it was more expensive than a Silversea South Africa trip I did, which was, but that was even before I added on some of the excursions and because I think the free at sea was in a promotion on that one, so I didn't even have to add the cost on. So I think price, doing a proper price comparison. I think the second thing that people worry about is they worry that it's all going to be very snooty, and they're not going to feel comfortable. And in reality, it's not like that at all, because people are people in reality. So you have the same problems. You still have chair hogs, you still have people still moan about whatever, and love whatever. You still have pretty much the same excursions and stuff. So so the misconception is it's actually about the cruising experience with fewer people, calmer, quieter, more personalization stuff. I think the other misconception is probably around people think that they have to bring jewels and tiaras, and it's most of them are actually, some of them have even more relaxed dress codes than some of the other cruise lines do. So when I go on many of those ships, I never pack a jacket, for example. But if I'm going on America, I might take a jacket with me, because I know on those, what do they call them now, gala nights, many people wear jackets. But I go on many of those. I know no one will wear a jacket, for example. So I think people worry that it's going to be that. I mean, I think the big plus, I'll talk about some of the pluses. The big plus is the fact that people get to know your name. It's way more personalized, and often the itineraries are more interesting because they can go into smaller places, which is appealing.
Yeah. So to your point about price, I just booked a guest on what Azamara calls an 8-night intensive, Italy. So it's just Italy for 8 nights, and her mom are in a prime veranda for about $5,800 for the two of them.
Yeah.
And this is Wi-Fi is included. Most of the meals are included. Beer, wine, champagne is included. Actually, all the cocktails are included.
The specialties are included. So specialties.
Yeah. So I mean, I can put him into a balcony on Celebrity for the exact same price.
Absolutely.
But it's not going to be that cruise. They're going to have to go around the Med because the ship is too big to do what Azamara is going to do.
Yeah. And particularly in Europe, you're right. Some of those, I haven't looked at, because I've looked at some of their intensives. I don't know if I've looked at the Italian one, but like when we went around the Greek islands, say on Seabourn, Mark and I mean, we went to these islands that no other ship goes to, because they've only got 600 passengers. So they can pull up outside Paphos, whatever it's called, and just tender people in with no queue, maybe a 3.5 minute queue or something.
Exactly.
Because they can, and the island can cope with 600 people coming on board and pottering around. So to those, particularly in Europe, it's a big plus. I think the smaller ship.
Yeah, and to your point about the dress code, we were on Oceania for 12 nights, and I have a nice pair of dress jeans, and I have a button-down shirt, and that was my wardrobe every night. Yeah, same as going to any Royal Caribbean restaurant.
Exactly.
Really. So, and then the other thing I wanted to touch on, river cruising as well. So obviously, even if you're on a small ship, you're still going to have probably 600 to 1,000 people around you. And then you come over to a river ship that might only have 100, 125 total on the entire ship. So for people coming over from ocean cruising, what are maybe 3 things that an ocean cruiser should know about when they come over to river cruising?
I think that it's nothing like cruising is one of the things I would say. I don't expect it to be like cruising. And what I say, the reason I say is, first of all, I mean, you're right. You're going to have, depending on which line you go with, between 100 and 180 people. So so where there's going to be way few people, so there's nowhere to hide in reality. So if you are
nowhere to hide.
So if you don't like mixing with people and people to know who you are, I mean, you can't do it on a river, because literally people will know who you are with you. So if you want to be very anonymous, it's much more challenging. But you're not going to have as much choice. So dining is probably going to be one restaurant, which you'll have breakfast in, you'll have lunch in, and you'll have dinner. Dinner will be a sit down. If you just want to have a quick buffet dinner, you probably can't. There won't be room service. Some increasingly have more, but so the other thing is the rhythm is nothing like ocean. So on ocean, you might have a sea day, but you might in a port at 8, out at 6 or whatever. A river could be completely different. You might be in a port for a morning, you might move at lunchtime, you might be staying in the afternoon, you might be staying in the morning, you might stay overnight. They say overnight. So the rhythm is kind of not the same at all. Then there's other quirky things like, which throws people a lot, is often you might have bought this beautiful balcony cabin with great picture windows, but every port you're in, you're slap bang up against another ship. You have to climb over ships to get to port or go through ships to get to port. So that throws people quite a lot. They don't expect that. On the other side is there's not a chance. I think it's fair to say it's impossible to get seasick. So if you're nervous because you don't feel motion, you literally gliding through. Also, from an excursion perspective, unlike ocean cruising, you're way more limited because, particularly in Europe, we're talking Europe specifically, you're going on rivers which are most of the excursions will be. I mean, there's a joke about like, oh, not another cathedral. So the excursions will tend to be much more culture, walking tour. Now, some will now have bikes on board. You can go more biking, hiking, tours and stuff. But it's a much narrower choice of excursions, and because they're normally included. It will normally be a walking tour or a cycling tour, and that's kind of your stuff. You're very unlikely to have kids, although some cruise lines are trying to get more kids on, and it tends to be older. Generally.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And of course, one of the things that people need to understand too is that based on the river, part of your cruise might turn into a motor coach ride. Yeah,
that's a very good point. Unlike like on ocean, you might have bad weather and wind stop you getting to port. Here, literally, it could be too high water, which happened this year at the beginning of the season. Ships couldn't get under bridges, or too low water, they can't move down. So I've had a number of cruises. So some they might pack you up and move you to a ship the other side. Others motor coach you because you're only traveling 20 to 50 miles. In reality, it's easy for them to coach you out to places.
Sure. So with all of that said, would you think that there's a particular river line or maybe a particular cruise that's a good starter for people who are maybe coming over from ocean, or maybe they've just never done a river cruise?
Yeah, and I'm going to do some shameless self-promotion, Walt, I'm afraid.
Go for it.
My video that comes out today, coincidentally.
Exclusive, everybody. Write this down. This is awesome.
Minutes time. This video is actually around the 8 highest rated cruise lines in Europe. Next week's one is the 5 lowest rated cruise lines in Europe, based on current reviews. But so if people are interested in river cruising, I'll do a quick promo there. But it's a bit like, I mean, I think the thing with river cruising is, river cruising is quite costly. Even if you're going on a value line, it's quite costly per night. I mean, you're talking $250, £200 a night, upwards at least. So choosing a line is really important. The lines aren't as different in reality as, say, ocean. Royal Caribbean's completely different to Azamara and stuff. All the ships look the same. They're the same size, the same width, and they have the same facilities. So one of the things I sort of say to people is, if you go with something like, people who've been around a long time, like Viking, for example, Viking have the most amount of ships. They're the biggest fleet of ships across all the rivers of Europe. So they have the most amount of itineraries. If you hit low water issues, they actually are more able to move people between ships and stuff. So something like a Viking is a good kind of workhorse, if you like. They know really well. They are sort of an upper middle. They're towards the higher, but they're not in the top category, which is like Uniworld, Riverside. They're sort of in the luxury category, but they are the kind of the big dominant force. So that's kind of where I look. But if people are worried more about that, one of the US travelers really like is talc, which I guess a lot of people in the US trust talc. They have very good excursion side, and then if you're adventurous, look at something like across Europe. You may be only 5 of you English speakers on board, but across Europe is a much more value line. They have the second biggest fleet. They're most diverse. They're more diverse rivers than Viking. And I've had some great time on. And if you like French food and stuff, if you know a smattering of French, it's even better. But you don't need to. They do cater for English speakers. But that's sort of where I would go. I would go with those because those the Viking across Europe have the biggest fleets on the most rivers, and you know, and other than across Europe, mostly you'll find most of your fellow guests will be Americans. In reality, there are a couple of UK lines like Riviera and stuff, which are much harder for non-UK people to book.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring up Riviera because they're trying to now make inroads here. I've met with the representative a couple of times. And they are now trying to get their name over here in the US.
Right. Yeah, because they're really they're pretty big in the UK.
Yeah,
they call themselves, because in fact, for the video I made, because they're in one of the two videos, I'll spoiler, but they
go ahead, tell us everything that's in the video, Gary.
Bit of hype, don't you? Like they talk about, I think they say they are the biggest UK. It's one of those things, you know, for a marketing claim, you kind of
sure.
They because they're very dominant, like they're river cruising stuff. It's mostly UK travelers. In fact, they've been getting a lot of bloggers and stuff recently on their ships. In fact, Tom and Dom have been on Riviera, I think, even. I think
Tom and Dom were on Riviera just recently as well. Yeah.
Moment as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, they're definitely trying to make a name, and we're starting to promote them ourselves, actually, for some of our clients.
Good.
Yeah. Right now, Avalon and Ama and Uniworld are probably the three that we book the most.
Yeah.
The thing that turns off people on Viking is they want their money 12 to 14 months in advance.
Of course, yes. If you're booking out of the US, that's true. Yeah, that's true. It's funny because they have in different countries, they have different kind of rules.
They don't trust Americans, apparently.
For a US, it's pretty.
Yeah, it's kind of nutty.
Scary,
I said, wow, we're almost at the top of the hour. I'm going to throw this up there. This will be a fun one to just kind of wrap up on here. Comparing family cruise lines with all adult cruise lines. Obviously, the experiences are different, but you know, you've been on the Symphony of the Seas, you've been on Virgin, you've been on luxury. How would maybe a couple of quick comparisons?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, other than the obvious, one has kids and one doesn't have kids, I guess. But I would say the biggest difference is probably that family cruise lines are, you know, from an entertainment perspective and a choice perspective, are in another league because they are very much focused on, and they have the budget to do big stuff. So, you know, you've got your ice shows, you've got your production shows, you've got your water shows, you've got, if they do a quiz, it's a big production. You know, their version of Deal or No Deal, different ships, their version of Deal or No Deal is way bigger production than when I've seen it on other lines, which also do Deal or No Deal, which is more just sit on his laptop. There's the whole production of it. So I think it's around the scale of entertainment, because they tend to be bigger ships. You know, there's much more diverse entertainment. But they're right, from a fundamental perspective, they tend to go to the same ports. They tend to still have a choice of bars. They still have specialty dining. You know, they still have, you know, all those kind of things as well. That would be the big difference. Yeah.
And I see Tom and Dom said they were on the Joffrey Chaucer on the Rhine.
The other thing is that someone else is on Chaucer at the moment. I've been following. I feel like. I think Fraser at Sea was on the Chaucer last.
Okay. Well, Gary, we've actually gone about an hour, but I would be remiss if I did not ask, and I bet a lot of people want to know too, where did you get that beautiful ship that is behind you?
Yeah, this is I get asked about this a lot, and I actually got it quite a long time ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, through eBay. I used to be addicted to eBay in those days, and there was a guy who has disappeared. And I think he might have passed away, I'm not sure, but I have this and I have the QE2s, and I haven't found anybody else that does them quite like this. Well, I did see someone post recently. I'm trying to find out. So if I ever find out where, I will let people know, because I get asked a lot. But it is great. I think it's like 3 foot long.
Wow.
It's magnificent. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, every time we go on a cruise ship, there is a big, beautiful model of it somewhere, and that's what that reminds me of.
It's almost that sort of quality. It's kind of the detail's amazing.
Beautiful.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
There's a few things like some of the railings have come off and stuff. You can't see that, but that's slowly.
You're going to have to do a video on that, Gary. You know, you could just get your little Osmo or GoPro and get in there and do a little video on that. I'd love to see it. Well, folks, can you believe it? It's already been an hour here today. So Gary, and by the way, your video should be live right about now. So if you want to see his video
watch it.
on river cruises, go check that out. Gary, I can't thank you enough for all of your support. You've been one of our earliest supporters since we kicked all of this off. Pleasure. And I just can't thank you. You've had a lot of kind words. We've had some great discussions when I needed some advice, and you've been there. And I just can't thank you enough for being just who you are and supporting us.
That's a pleasure. I'm always very enthusiastic to try and support people trying new things and starting out. So very happy to do that.
Well, thank you so much. So everybody, once again, I'm Walter with Where's Walter Travel. We're your independent travel agent. We book cruises, land, luxury, and expedition. You can reach out to us at where'swaltertravel.com. There's links down in the description. We are very honored that Gary considers us one of 2 travel agents here in the United States that he can recommend to his travelers. So Gary, as always, thank you so very much for coming on the show today.
Great. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
And folks, I'll be back tomorrow morning at 10:30 Eastern time. Gary's going to be back tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern time on his channel. So you get a double dose of both of us. All right, everybody. Everybody have a great rest of your Saturday.